Right, now if you've been watching these in any order, you'll know that the last video ended with us finding the boost map. So there we are, boost map. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to look for the map that limits the boost, because the boost can't just run any old how it likes. There is a map that controls the boost, as in limiting it to within safe parameters. Now, out of interest, and we'll come to this later, this is the map that's controlling that boost map. So in other words, what's going on in here causes or allows what's going on in here, but there is another map which prevents this one from getting out of control. And the map that we're looking for is the boost limiter. Now, it's usually very close nearby, so I'm going to guess it's that one. It's often got little bobbles in it, just like that. So similar to this, where that one's a bit more spiky and this one's a little bit more smooth. So I'm going to guess it's that one. So I'm going to double click on that one and hope that Winols has found it. So there I am. So I've got that. If I've got the right map, and if this is to do with boost, and if I've done the boost map here first, it's probable, by no means certain, but it's probable that Winols will get a lot of this information correct, because it's had this one as a guide. So let's have a look. We've got something there that could well be something to do with air pressure. So let's go and have a look at what we've got there. Atmospheric pressure, millibars. Well, it could be, couldn't it? I mean, it's running sensible numbers, 600, 1100. I mean, that could well be okay. So let's just say yes, we'll accept that one for a minute. Let's have a look at this one up here. I'm a bit suspicious. Look, revs per minute, and these are nuts. If you've seen some of the earlier videos, we had this several times where we had numbers like this. Let's double click on that one. Engine speed, revs per minute. Okay, let's assume that Winols got that right, but not the offset. So we'll put 1 in there and we'll ignore the precision. Right, let's have a look. Okay, now does that seem reasonable? Well, depending on what you know about how the turbocharger and the car works, this would be very reasonable, because there are no values below 1500. But of course 1500 is pretty much when the boost starts on these cars. So it's not surprising there's no values below 1500. And of course 4700, well, most of the time you don't want to rev your engine to those sorts of values. Somebody might want to, but generally speaking, when you're driving a normal car on the road, you're operating in here somewhere, aren't you? You tend not to be right at the peak all the time. It could be, it's entirely up to you. Right, now what have we got here then? Well, this is probably air pressure as well then, isn't it? But it's probably boosted air pressure, just like it was in the boost map. So if we double click on that one, so what we think this is the boost limiting map. So that's what I'll call that one, without the U stuck in the middle of it, which spoils it. And I'll take a guess. I mean, I could call this boost pressure, but I'm not going to. I'm going to call that air pressure. If you want, you can call it boost pressure, can't you? And I'm going to call that millibars. So I'm going to assume that that's millibars. I'm going to assume that the factor is correct. I'm going to assume that I don't need to change precision. So I'm just going to say OK. Now again, to give myself an idea, I'm going to look at first 2D, which of course only shows me what I've seen before, or 3D. Now again, if I've looked at enough of these maps, I will know whether this is the limiting map or not, and it does look like the boost limiting map. So there is a fairly good chance it is the boost limiting map. So there's a good chance I've got this one right. Now what I'll do is I'll go back to the text and give a few more pointers as to why I think I'm right. Now here we've got the boost, and it's being limited, I am assuming. Now let's have a look at why that would be. Well, up here 900, 950, 98. So up here where we've got a fair amount of air pressure, we have got fairly high values allowed for boost. So when we look over here, we've got fairly high values allowed. And if we look, what we've got here is probably the best, isn't it? Is that 2400? So it looks like we've got a maximum boost being allowed for of 2400 millibars. Now if we've got this correct, as we go up or down, depending on how you view it, I'll say down. So if we go down these rows and we assume we're climbing a mountain, we've got less pressure. So in other words, we're being limited. Now that would make perfect sense, because when the air pressure is lower, the air will be thinner, the turbocharger will try to spin too fast, and if it does, it will break. So there's a lot of evidence looking at that map to suggest we've got the right one, and to suggest that the figures on the map are the right figures. So it seems quite reasonable. And of course, now we've done that, we can look at this, and this might be our guide for the future. If we spot this shape, can we assume that we've actually found that map? Now there is one easy way to tell, that is to close that down, leave that there and change the view. And if we change the view, don't worry about the fact that the number of columns has suddenly changed. Winols often does that because of one of the settings. But look, now we've got that same shape reflected there. So had we been accidentally lucky and been looking at this file in roughly this way, so we've got this number of columns, we might have spotted this just by searching through the text. And there are lots of people who can find maps by doing that. They can just whiz through the text, and as soon as they spot areas like this, they can say, right, I found the area that I want, that's a map. But as I've said in several of these videos, the simplest thing though when searching is to look for the 2D maps, because they are so much easier to recognize. And if we look at the 3D map, you don't want to go there. So the 2D maps, they're the ones that usually give us the best guide. Right, I'm going to stop there.